Hello, campers. A very, very happy Monday to you all. Sincerely hope you are all well. It's Andy here, your professional human, coming to you in association with Anywhere Auctions, who are absolute rock stars. I tell you what, they have helped bail a few agencies out over the weekend with some very, very good bits of kit that's helped some of the agents really try and navigate this sort of hybrid on-site, off-site, online sort of scenario that we've all been dealing with over the last few weeks. Thank you to Anywhere Auctions for all of their support. Team, how are we? How's our weekend been? Out of 10, give us some scores on the doors below. I know that the REIQ Awards came through the other day, and some amazing names took out some amazing awards. And I tell you what, I want half jealous because it looked absolutely amazing. Big Ian Carter let us know this morning. It was around about 300 odd people that were there, and it looked like an absolute ripper of an evening. So many congratulations to everybody up in Queensland who picked up an award, and for those that were even named a finalist, to be able to do that when all the shit's been going on, it's a massive effort, right? And I know that some people belittle it and say, "Oh, you have to nominate yourself," blah 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 blah. Bollocks. Well, if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. So even if you were nominated as a finalist, well done to you. The REIV Awards came through the other day as well, online, of course. And again, some incredible wins picked up by some amazing people. I do want to give a particular little shout out to Ben Roberts, who operates with his wife based up in Sunbury, and they are just the best. They really, really do know their niche and they work to it so incredibly well. So well done, Benny Roberts, you absolute superstar. Team, let us know how your weekend was. Give us a couple of wins. Type in a couple of your wins that you've had over the weekend as well, guys, please. Let us know how you've got on. And make sure that you put some success stories in there so that we can all revel in your glory and your magnificence. But most importantly, team, scores on the doors, comment section below. Give us a score out of 10. Let us know how your weekend was. Team, on to the topic for today. Straight into it, I reckon. It was a conversation that came up after I was talking to an office in New South Wales around auction campaigns and working with buyers and trying to create that level of urgency in amongst buyers and what have you. And they were talking to me about or asking me about any sort of scripts or dialogues or methods that they can use to avoid. And I'm not using this as what they did as a problem, but they were just sort of wanting to try and avoid some of these really awkward conversations that were happening between themselves and buyers. Because they were running some auction campaigns and they decided not to put prices on them because they're finding something that is happening all over the country now, which is vendors starting to get ahead of themselves a little bit too much. We mentioned it a few shows ago. Just to reiterate it again, there are vendors now, and this is the first sign. It is the very first sign of a changing market when vendors get too far ahead of the momentum that is in the marketplace, right? So we talked about utilizing transparency as a power. Now, I want to make sure, excuse me for a sec, while I rearrange myself. I want to make sure, gang, that you don't see the word transparency and automatically use that as a wanker basket word. I know that some of you have heard me use that phrase, wanker basket. I don't want you to use it in the wanker basket sense that you are to sell yourself and say, look, I operate with transparency and integrity and hey, look at us. Look at how good we are. I want to talk about utilizing transparency in a much more strategic way, right? This isn't just some throwaway line to say that you've got to be transparent nowadays in order to be a good real estate agent. I want to talk about how you can actually utilize it in a strategically positive way that can help you to break down barriers with your buyers, your landlords, your potential sellers, your vendors, your tenants, all those sorts of things, right? All those people, all of our consumers, right? Doesn't matter what part of the game you're in. This is something that I feel is relevant to the whole game. Okay. Now, hasten to reiterate, this is not a wanker basket session. This is not where I tell you transparency is the way forward, guys. Hey, you've heard that said a whole bunch of times, and hardly anyone's paying attention. So let me give you a strategic breakdown as to why it's really important. Then maybe instead of just saying that you're transparent and you're giving it lip service as to your transparency, you'll actually use it is one of your big powers when it comes to negotiating, when it comes to positioning sellers, when it comes to getting buyers to the right level, all this sort of stuff, right? Really powerful stuff. Because at the minute, most people that put themselves out there as trainers, coaches, guides, mentors, whatever you want to call them, they talk about acting with transparency, but there's very little digging under the surface of what that inherently means. But I want to talk about things around that word transparency that one gives a lot of professionals in the space the willies. It really does. As soon as you hear the word, lots of people go, "Oh yeah." Oh. Now it's not like they're bad people, but the word transparency, in a lot of senses, in a lot of ways that it's being portrayed, is a bit of it can be seen as something of a weakness, right? Where effectively by transparency, you're talking about basically becoming an order taker. Far from it, gang. We want to talk about how transparency can become extremely powerful. And something else that's just popped into my head. Fuck, it makes your life a lot easier. It really, really does. So, first things first, we really need to get over ourselves in thinking that we know more than our consumers. And now I'm not talking about strategies or negotiation tactics or anything like that. EQ, whatever you call it. I'm not talking about that as such. What I'm talking about is we seem to have this inane, and I don't know whether it's because of the way that the industry's being led or the way it's being taught or the way it's being conveyed to industry professionals right now. But at the minute, there just seems to be this inherent fear of clients, consumers knowing stuff, right? When I'm talking about market knowledge, if they're a purchaser, or previous sales if they're a seller, or rental amounts in the area if they're a landlord potentially, right? It really does. It's really Luke, how you doing, mate? It really does sort of. It's this inane fear that other people, that shit, consumers might actually know what we know. Well, fuck, what else have we got then? Gang, you've got your knowledge of the game and all that sort of stuff. That's what you get paid for. You don't get paid to just spout numbers at people, all right? Which is what generally a lot of the time happens. So the first thing I want to point out is that there's this little website, right? Don't know if you've heard of it. I just wrote it on the thing down on the bottom there. There's this little website, right, called Google. And believe it or not, team, I'm sure one or two of you may have used it before, but you can guarantee, right? You can guarantee any consumer, whichever part of the market it is, tenant, buyer, seller, landlord, you could all but guarantee that they've done at least one little tippy tap on this little website down here called Google, right? They've done at least one search on Google to try and answer the question before they have to ask you. Of course they have. Of course they have. Aside from the fact that our industry hasn't got the best rep in the world for being ultra upfront with all of the knowledge and awareness and figures and so on and so forth, right? Google just knows more stuff. It does. So, team, my first point that I want to make is you have got to be kidding yourselves if you are talking to a purchaser at a property and they're asking you, so what is the vendor looking to take, right? Or so have you had any other, or what sort of price are you expecting for it? If you don't think that they haven't looked on Google, you are acting so incredibly naive. Are you saying we need to be Googling? No, mate. I'm actually saying the opposite of that. What I'm saying is, instead of trying to think that we know more than Google, which is what a lot of agents tend to do, because and I get it I get it to a degree, right? Because ultimately we're professionals, we're getting paid to do this, then we should know more in terms of facts and figures and numbers than than the consumers that are out there, right? And to a point, yes, we should, because that's just basic professionalism to know what the fuck you're talking about. But we should not be thinking in any way, shape, or form that the person on the other side of that, the consumer, hasn't got any sort of understanding whatsoever. Like it's just almost impossible to think that consumers haven't at least done one little flick on Google to see what house prices are going for what, or what rental amounts are being achieved in X, Y, and Z suburb and all the rest of it for a 3-bed, 4-bed, blah, 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 blah. They can find all of that out just the same as us. Okay. So we need to stop thinking like we know more than Google, because chances are we don't. Now, at the same time, we need to obviously. I'm not saying that you need to therefore assume that other people know what they know what's going on and what have you. Again, fine line between assumption and whatnot. But at the same time, we need to make sure that if we are to put any information out, if we are to talk to a potential purchaser, for example. So here's a hypothetical. So say for example, and this was the case in this training session that I did earlier on. They've got an auction property that they haven't put a price on, right? And there's a buyer that's come forward and said, I want to pay exactly, you know what I mean, Luke? Um as a buyer, there's a buyer that said, right, I want to pay 820. What's the what price are you expecting to achieve? Now, they will have seen other properties that have sold in that area by looking on Google, right? They would have, or it's fair to assume that they would have. However, what I suggested to these guys is to say, look, as I'm sure you possibly already know, which negates any of that assumption, but at the same time acknowledges, right, that they might have an idea as to what the market feels that particular property is worth, that townhouse, right? As I'm sure you're probably aware, right? There's been a couple of sales in the area, one down at number 4 Smith Street that went for 850, 860, and one down there that went actually for 950, which is an amazing result. So and I'm sure you probably would have done the homework on Google. You probably found that out for yourselves, right? Yeah, of course you did. Of course you did. So based on those two results, you know, you've got a bit of a rough ballpark as to where this one's likely to sit if you're thinking about it from a logical point of view. Now, the one thing that doesn't account for is the emotional tax that happens on auction day, right? Because people get carried away. You might have already done it once yourself and felt yourself getting carried away. It happens, right? And none of us can dictate how much that puts on top. But if you're thinking about it logically, that's got to be your barometer. But you probably already knew that, right? And what that does is, because all a buyer is looking to do in that instance is play the game. They want to challenge you, right? They want you to say something that is contradictory to whatever it is that they found on Google, because they want to be right. They want to win that power, that unspoken upper hand between purchaser and agent. They want to win some power, right? So that they can then move forward on their terms as a purchaser in this transaction, right? So what I'm saying is, right, by acknowledging Google, right, and coming into my second point now, which is getting over the fear of consumers knowing stuff, I've taken that power away from the game completely. I've managed in that one brief sentence to acknowledge that they've probably gone and done their homework. I understand that they would have, because there's this website called Google that tells everybody everything. And therefore, I understand the arsenal, the weapons, the power that they feel that they've gained by going on to Google, and I've taken it away from them. It's like Eminem in 8 Mile, right? instead of waiting for someone else in that final rap battle to go like hell for leather at him, young Eminem has turned around and just absolutely acknowledged all of his faults, all of his fails, all of this, that, and the other, to the point where the opposing rap artist had fuck all to say. I think that that's a really, really good way to go. I would much rather, instead of having this stupid old school tete-a-tete about who's got bigger bollocks and all this sort of stuff, right? I'll just whip the carpet from under their feet and say, look, as I'm sure you've probably seen, there's that one over there that went for 800, that one over there that went for 850, and there was one over there that went for 950, right? Which is absolutely Mickey Mouse. And then, did you have a chance to look through it? You did. Right. Well, you would totally see that one is absolutely tip top, yeah? Look, and that's where logic would, that's where you got to work out the logic based on the fact that that one is an absolute rock and roll one. There's a couple down there. I'm pretty sure we can agree that those ones in that early ballpark, they're probably, did you go see those ones? Okay, so you saw one of them, the one that went for 800, right? Okay, cool. So you know as well as I do then that this one's got to be worth, it's got to be worth more than 20 grand over that 800 property, right? Surely you can agree with that. And therefore, team, I'm negating any such power that buyers think they have, right? And the same can be said with tenants. The same can be said with landlords. The same thing could be said with potential sellers, vendors, right? Our job is not to just like justify numbers, right? For the sake of it. Our job is to play the human game. If all you do from a negotiation point of view, for example, is deal in the numbers all the time, you're bringing fuck all to the table. Nothing. From an actual value point of view, the value that we bring in our game is not the numbers, because otherwise robots would be doing our job. It's the human bit. It's playing those emotions. It's understanding the dynamic of what's going on and making sure that dynamic is played on your terms, so that you do position your client in the best place possible in order to make the most amount of money for the asset, right? Embracing this understanding that so many within the industry really struggle to comprehend is the fact that consumers know way more about the game than what we give them credit for. Even now, when it comes to the basic dollars and cents and numbers and so on and so forth. So why do we keep acting like it? Why? It's the same if we go into a listing presentation, right? With a landlord, potential landlord, right? Going in as a BDM and thinking somehow that what you're saying to them in terms of rental prices being achieved and all that, if you think that you're bringing something groundbreaking to them, you're kidding yourself. You're totally kidding yourself. And it's the same with agents, the sales agents. Going into a listing presentation and going through sales prices of properties in the area, and two things. One, you don't think that they've already found that out for themselves. And two, like the previous two agents haven't done exactly the same fucking thing. You've got to be kidding yourselves that you're bringing them information that they either don't already know or that someone else hasn't already shown them. So stop dwelling and focusing your conversation around these numbers that are just so out there for everybody to see. It's not even funny. The only chance you've got of having any sort of insider information if you've got some off-market sales, right? But even then, they're going to have to get reported at some point. They'll find out at some stage. So we've got to be very, very aware of this, team. But instead of worrying about it, embrace the damn thing. Embrace it is a massive positive. Mr. and Mrs. Sellers, I'm sure you've seen There's been 4 or 5 sales that I probably list before coming to see the property. In terms of numbers, stats, right? Bedrooms, bathrooms, size, all that sort of stuff. There's 4 or 5 in the area that I deemed as relevant just based on the numbers, right? So let's have a quick look through them. I'm sure you will have seen them though, yeah. You got that one there, and then got, oh yeah, saw that one, but that had this, that. Exactly, you're absolutely spot on, and that's why we're working through it, because now I've had a chance to have a look through your property in greater detail. I can be a bit more accurate as to where these are likely to pose any real threat or danger or concern for us moving forward. The fact that they've seen it means that I don't have to justify it because they already know it's there, and we can move forward on the understanding that we know what's gone on, right? It's a much healthier way to go and be with anyone. Seriously, team, I love my life being simple, my mind being simple, so I don't have to worry about making complex decisions because I'm breaking everything down into nice, simple scenarios. Makes my life a damn sight easier, makes my job a lot easier. It'd make your job a lot easier as well if you just stop worrying about other people knowing stuff. It's a great thing. Excellent, excellent. Look, that all that means to me, all that says to me is that all we need to focus on is how we're going to move forward. We don't have to worry about what's gone on in the past because I've already seen here that you understand everything that's gone on in the marketplace up to this point in your particular area. Awesome. That's amazing for me. Because what that says to me is that you've got a vested interest in wanting to do well. And so do I. So I'm really excited to move forward based on that. That's so good. It also means, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that as and when we come and do our weekly catch-ups, when we review as to what's come on the market and what's sold in the previous week and all that sort of stuff, you probably already know 1 or 2 of the properties that will have come on the market in the meantime, and you've had a chance to do a bit of a comparison, because that's what buyers are going to do. Yeah, excellent. It means that when we come and have our weekly catch-up, just to discuss how we've got on the previous week and potential plans of attack moving forward, that means that we can crack on. We don't have to tread over old ground. We can crack on. That's great. It's an acknowledgement that, because ultimately the second that we are contradictory to anything that they found on Google, a barrier will go up. A defense mechanism will go up because it's not what they found for themselves. Massive point that. If you say anything that contradicts anything that they found on Google, a barrier will go up. And then you got to navigate that quite carefully. Picking up the sign, picking up the tell that you've just said something that's not quite as per what they've read or understood already. Can you feel that aura change, that atmosphere, that dynamic change within that conversation? If you're aware of it, if you're actually paying attention to the stuff you should be paying attention to, instead of just getting your presentation right and focusing on the humans instead of the shit, you actually might give yourself a better chance of picking up on that stuff. Ask me going into a completely different topic. Big thing is this one though, gang. Acknowledging their knowledge is the best way to get defenses down whenever you're coming to any sort of negotiation, whether it's getting a listing on board, winning the trust of that potential vendor, whether it's getting buyers onto the right page from a negotiation point of view. Acknowledging their knowledge is way more important than almost anything else, because the second that they feel that they know something different to you is that's the second that they will just stop listening to you, because they feel that they know better than you, because that's what buyers do, that's what vendors do, that's what humans do, right? So let's stop fighting it, team. Let's just pop that balloon of bravado. The balloon of bravado. Bang! There you go. Here's another little one. Let's pop that balloon of bravado that our consumers understandably tend to have whenever they enter into conversations, negotiations with us. That balloon is blown up by Google and them unthinking that they know what's going on. You can't tell me anything that I don't already know, Mr. Agent, Mrs. Agent, Miss Agent. So what value have you got to bring to me? I already know this stuff that you're already telling me in this listing presentation because I Googled it beforehand. What value are you actually bringing me? That's the game at play right there, team. That's the subliminal game that's being played. If you don't acknowledge that, you're fucked. It's a race to the bottom of your commission. Simple as that. This is a way healthier way to play the game. And before anybody gets on their high horse and says it's not a game, it's a serious transaction, blah, 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 fuck off. I know it's a serious transaction. But the emotions at play are a game that need to be paid more attention to in a massive way. Because if you're getting guided, if you're an agent or if you're a BDM and you're getting guided to operate in predominantly dollars and cents, facts and figures, then you will have no plan B for when it goes wrong. You are a plan A player. And it isn't hard to beat you, to be honest. For those that are in any way more aware than that, you're stuffed. I'm just saying it as it is, gang. Because 85% of listing agents, 85% of BDMs, all they do is operate in facts and figures, dollars and cents, and somehow think that whatever they're delivering to that potential client is in any way, shape, or form groundbreaking. It's not. Couldn't be further from being groundbreaking. And a lot of that's to do with the lack of understanding and awareness and courtesy that we have on our population, our public, our consumers, that they may have just once typed in house prices in my suburb on Google. And that's just at the very basic surface level. Any vendor or seller that's in any way seriously motivated, in any way, shape, or form, you reckon it probably would have done a bit more homework than that? Ooh, I reckon they did. So let's embrace it, team. It's one of the easiest ways to gain a collaborative approach, to gain a collaborative relationship with our potential clients and therefore our clients moving forward, is to acknowledge what they know. Give it a thumbs up. If it's not, if they're wrong, if they've read the whole thing wrong, then don't just say, oh, yeah, great, you're right. I'll just be a yes person. No, I'm not saying that. But acknowledging what they know about the game and their assets and what have you puts you on a much more even playing field, other than this falsified higher position, lower position that they feel they're on because of this bravado balloon. Yeah? Stick a pin in it. Bring them back to a level that allows you to operate as one. Instead of saying, oh, but this result's got this, and then they'll say, but that result's got that, and then they're blah, 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 and then they just think you're a wanker and piss you off. Yeah? Transparency is the power, but it's not in the way that it's being broadcast currently. It is strategically, if you work it correctly, it is strategically the most powerful way of getting a potential client's barriers down in order for you to work with them as human being to human being. Bang, fact. I'm super, super confident of this. Really confident of this. It's massive. We've got to get rid of this fear that they know stuff. That one there, it's huge. Because at the minute, we're still somehow think that we know more than the consumer base when it comes to the dollars and cents. They have the potential to know everything that we know. Let's just get over that fact and think and feel about how we can work our expertise as human beings in order to make sure that we make the most out of our clients' biggest assets, landlords, sellers, whatever. And when it comes to this sort of stuff with tenants, right? Just one last thought around tenants. Legislation in any state's a pain in the arse, right? Let's just call that for what it is. And it's changing all the time. So New South Wales, Victoria's happened, Queensland's next year. It happens. But the thing is, with any set of legislative changes, like the more modern those changes are, so the later these changes are happening, the more likely that they are going to be able to be found easier by tenants, because it's our job to make sure we've got freedom of information, ease of information, all that sort of stuff, right? It's important that it becomes easier for tenants to find things out. So we as PMs need to make sure that we need to go into that with a belief that these guys are likely to know what's going on. So we need to make sure we're operating at a level that has that as a bit of an assumption if you're going into any sort of conflict, or if you think there's going to be any real problem with a tenant around a certain situation. Because if you allow tenants in any way, shape, or form to feel that they have the upper hand on you because they know stuff that you don't know that they know, that you know that they know, that you know that they know, that makes sense, then you're never going to get on a level with them. Whereas if you turn around and say, look, I'm sure you will have done your homework on this, and I understand and acknowledge that because of X, Y, and Z, you may feel a little bit aggrieved as to what's gone on to this point, right? Right. Well, if you've read and understood that part of the legislation, you may well have also found that X, Y, and Z. Did you see that part? Oh, you did? Okay. So can I ask how we can resolve this moving forward? Because as I'm sure you can see and appreciate, that there is a part of the legislation that says that we are allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So how can we resolve this in a way that doesn't cause anybody any drama? It's such a better way to go. Conflict resolution. It's not a case of resolving the conflict. It's a case of dissolving the conflict so that there hardly is any. And then you can look at moving forward together to resolve a situation that is causing everybody anxiety. Tenant, agent, landlord. Everybody's anxious. Have a think about this, team. Get over the fear of consumers knowing stuff. Embrace it. And then work yourself through the way that you play your game based on that knowledge that they know stuff. And one or two things will happen. You'll either have a look at your game and go, fuck, well, what else have I got? And that's a massive alarm bell that you need to fucking sharpen your skills really quickly. Or what it'll do is make you more aware of the fact that there are more human components to this game than what I'm giving credit for, or than what I've been taught for in the past. How I've been taught in the past. Yeah? Have a think about that, gang, because it's massive. I reckon that this is huge, especially in a turning market. Transparency is the game. Those that are more comfortable in that style of operating are going to find themselves in a much stronger position moving forward. Yes, if you're going to play the game in a traditional sense, you might win one or two deals short term. Tell you now, long term, you'll get found out. If there's someone in your area that is way more comfortable sitting in this transparency train of thought and strategy and power, then you might get ahead of them short term. I'm telling you, they will fucking catch up and annihilate you long term. It's up to you which one you want to play. Team, hope you found that helpful. Hope you just created maybe a little bit more awareness around this, right? Because I still think we're so tremendously naive in our actions around the understanding that our consumer base is a lot more knowledgeable. about stuff. All right, team, have yourselves an amazing week. I hope you have an absolute rock and roll week. It's a huge week for this young man right here, and I hope it is for a lot of you guys as well. But team, aside from anything else, just please make sure you stay safe, stay healthy. Most importantly, stay happy. And if you are struggling, reach out to someone and tell them you want to have a coffee, because we're all allowed to now. How good's that? All right, team, you take care. Look after yourselves and each other. We'll speak to you Wednesday, same time, same bat channel. Take it easy, team.